The coffee shop smelled like burnt espresso and regret. Clare sat at the corner table, fingers twisting the strap of her purse, waiting for another blind date she never asked for. She rehearsed her exit strategy. In 20 minutes. 30 at most. Then he walked in. Tall, clean-cut, confident. Everything she expected would walk right back out. Clare whispered to herself, "No one marries a fat girl." Ryan sat down across from her and smiled. "Let's prove them all wrong." Clare Morgan taught English literature at Lincoln High, the kind of teacher students remembered years later, because she actually listened. She had her own apartment on Maple Street, bookshelves crammed with poetry collections, and a small desk by the window where she wrote late into the night. Her third manuscript sat in a drawer, half finished. She told herself she was busy. The truth lived somewhere darker. The blind date had been her sister's idea. Rachel had cornered her at Sunday dinner 3 weeks ago, scrolling through profiles of eligible men who apparently needed saving as much as Clare did. "Just one date," Rachel had said. "What's the worst that could happen?" Clare could have listed 20 answers. She'd lived them all before. The coffee shop was neutral territory, public enough to feel safe, close enough to her apartment that she could walk home when it inevitably crashed and burned. She'd worn her favorite sweater, the deep gray one that didn't cling, and had spent 40 minutes on her makeup before wiping half of it off. What was the point? He'd see her. And then came the moment when his eyes would scan her body, and something would shift. The smile would tighten, the conversation would shorten, the check would come early. She'd stopped expecting anything different. Ryan Fitzgerald had walked in exactly on time, which surprised her. Most men showed up late to these things, like they were doing her a favor by showing up at all. He wore dark jeans and a gray Henley, and when he spotted her at the corner table, he didn't hesitate. Didn't slow down. Didn't do that thing where men pretended to check their phones while deciding whether to bail. He just walked over and sat down. That was when she'd whispered it. Not to him. To herself. A mantra she'd carried since high school. No one marries a fat girl. She hadn't meant for him to hear, but he had. And instead of looking away, instead of fumbling for some polite response, he'd smiled. Not the pitying kind. Not the uncomfortable kind. Ryan leaned forward slightly, his voice low and steady. "Let's prove them all wrong." Clare stared at him. Her throat tightened. She didn't know whether to laugh or leave. "You don't even know me," she said. "No," Ryan admitted, "but I know your poetry." That stopped her cold. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small literary journal, dog-eared and marked with sticky notes. Clare recognized it immediately. It was from 2 years ago, a local publication that had printed 3 of her poems under a pen name she thought no one paid attention to. "Your sister didn't set this up randomly," Ryan continued. "She knew I'd been asking about you." "Asking about me?" "I go to the same bookstore you do. The owner mentioned you'd done a reading there last spring. I bought the journal that night." He tapped the cover. "I've read these a dozen times, maybe more." Clare felt heat rise to her face, and it wasn't the good kind. It was the kind that came with confusion and suspicion. Men didn't do this. Men didn't show up with her work memorized and say things that sounded too good to be real. Why? The word came out sharper than she intended. Ryan set the journal on the table between them. "Because you write about finding beauty in the dark places, about surviving the voices that tell you you're not enough, and I needed to hear that." He met her eyes. "I needed to know I wasn't the only one." Clare wanted to ask what he meant, wanted to poke holes in whatever story he was selling, but something in his expression made her stop. There was no performance in it. No angle. Just a man sitting across from her, holding a journal like it mattered. She thought about her sister's phone call, the insistence, the way Rachel had said, "Just trust me on this one." "You're a single dad," Clare said. It wasn't a question. Rachel had mentioned it in passing, like it was some kind of selling point. "I am," Ryan confirmed. "My daughter's 7. Her name's Emma." "And her mother?" "Left 2 years ago. Fell in love with her personal trainer. Moved to California." Ryan's tone didn't waver. "I don't blame her. I wasn't what she wanted." Clare heard the wound beneath the words, the kind that didn't heal just because time passed. Maybe Rachel had been right. Maybe this wasn't random. "What are you looking for?" Clare asked. Ryan glanced down at the journal, then back at her. "Someone real," he said simply. "Someone who doesn't need me to be perfect." Clare felt something shift. Not hope, not yet, but maybe the beginning of it. Clare picked up her coffee cup, then set it back down without drinking. She could feel the weight of Ryan's attention, steady and unnerving. Most men looked at her and made calculations. He looked at her like he was waiting for something. "I don't do this," she said finally. "Date. Believe." The word came out harder than she meant it to. Men say things, nice things, and then they realize what they've signed up for, and the nice things stop. Ryan didn't flinch. He didn't rush to contradict her or offer some hollow reassurance. He just nodded, like he understood the math. "I used to think my ex-wife left because I wasn't enough," he said. "Not strong enough, not successful enough. Not the kind of man you put on display." He looked down at his hands. "Took me a year to realize she didn't leave because I failed. She left because I wasn't the fantasy she'd built in her head." Clare felt something crack open inside her chest. Not sympathy, something sharper. "And now you're here," she said. "With me, the woman who definitely isn't anyone's fantasy." Ryan's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. "You say that like you believe it." "Because it's true." Clare's hands curled into fists on the table. "You want to know what people see when they look at me? Pity. Or worse, a project. Someone they can fix if they just care enough. But they don't care. They just want to feel good about themselves for trying." "Is that what you think I'm doing?" "I don't know what you're doing." Clare's voice rose slightly, and she forced it back down. "But I know how this ends. You'll realize I'm not worth the hassle. The stares, the comments, the family dinners, where your mother wonders what you were thinking." Ryan leaned back in his chair. The small literary journal still sat between them, a bridge neither of them had fully crossed. "You wrote a poem about a woman who plants flowers in a junkyard," he said quietly. "And every spring, they bloom, no matter how many people tell her it's a waste of time." Clare blinked. She remembered that poem. She'd written it at 3 in the morning after another family dinner, where her mother had suggested a new diet plan. "What's your point?" she asked. "My point is, you already know the answer," Ryan said. "You keep planting flowers, even when no one believes they'll grow." Clare felt her throat tighten. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him that poetry wasn't real life, that metaphors didn't pay bills or survive Sunday dinners or erase the way men looked through her like she was invisible. But the truth was, she did keep planting flowers. She kept writing, kept teaching, kept showing up even when every voice in her head told her to stop. "You're doing it again," she said, her voice unsteady. "Saying things that sound perfect, like you rehearsed them." "I didn't rehearse anything," Ryan said. "I just read your work, and I recognize someone who's been told they're not enough." The words hit harder than Clare expected. She looked away, focusing on the table, the coffee cup, anything but his eyes. "Why me?" she asked. "You could have anyone, someone easier. Someone who doesn't come with all this baggage." "Because I don't want easy." Ryan's voice was firm now, not angry but certain. "I spent 5 years in a marriage where everything looked perfect on the outside. And it was empty. Hollow. I don't want that again." Clare finally looked up. His expression hadn't changed. No pity, No performance. Just honesty. Raw and uncomfortable. "You don't know me," she said again, quieter this time. "Then let me." Ryan reached across the table, not quite touching her hand, just resting his palm near hers. An invitation, not a demand. "Let me know you. The real you, not the version you think I want to see." Claire stared at his hand. She could count on one hand the number of times a man had reached for her like this, without hesitation, without calculation. Her sister's voice echoed in her head. "Just one date. What's the worst that could happen?" The worst had already happened. 1,000 small rejections. A lifetime of being told she was too much and not enough all at once. But maybe the worst thing wasn't rejection. Maybe it was never giving someone the chance to stay. Claire's hand moved before her brain caught up. She placed it on the table, not quite touching his, but close enough that the space between them felt like a choice instead of a wall. "I don't believe in fairy tales," she said. "Good," Ryan replied. "Neither do I. And I'm not going to change. I'm not going to become someone different just to make this easier. I don't want you to." Claire took a breath. The coffee shop hummed around them. The espresso machine hissed. Someone laughed at the counter. The world kept turning. Indifferent to whatever fragile thing was forming between them. "So what now?" she asked. Ryan smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. "Now we prove them wrong." Claire didn't smile back. Not yet. But she didn't pull her hand away either. Outside, the afternoon light slanted through the windows, casting long shadows across the table. The literary journal sat between them, a small monument to the words that had brought them here. And for the first time in longer than she could remember, Claire let herself consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, this could be different. They stayed in the coffee shop until the afternoon light turned gold, and the barista started wiping down tables with pointed efficiency. Claire had stopped checking her phone, stopped planning her escape. The conversation had shifted from careful to something closer to real. Ryan told her about Emma first, how she loved dinosaurs and refused to wear anything but her purple sneakers, how bedtime was a negotiation that lasted longer than the actual sleep, how she asked about her mother sometimes, and he never knew what to say that wouldn't sound like a lie. "She thinks her mom is coming back," Ryan said, staring into his empty coffee cup. "I don't have the heart to tell her that people don't come back just because you miss them." Claire recognized the ache in his voice, the kind that came from loving someone who couldn't love you back the way you needed. "My family thinks I'm waiting for the right person," Claire said. The words came out before she could stop them. "But the truth is, I stopped waiting a long time ago. I just learned how to look busy so they'd stop asking." Ryan looked at her, and she forced herself not to look away. "My mother brings diet books to family dinners," Claire continued. "Not because she's cruel, because she thinks she's helping. She thinks if I just tried harder, if I just cared more, everything would fall into place. Like my body is a problem that needs solving. And your father? He doesn't say anything, which is worse." Claire's hands tightened around her cup. "He just looks at me like he's disappointed, like I'm this close to being the daughter he wanted, if I could just fix this one thing." Ryan's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes sharpened. "What do you see when you look in the mirror?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. No one had ever asked her that, not directly. "I see someone who takes up too much space," Claire said quietly. "Someone who's always apologizing for existing." The words hung in the air between them. She'd never said it out loud before, never let anyone see that part of her. Ryan set his cup down and leaned forward. "I see someone who writes poetry about planting flowers in junkyards," he said. "Someone who teaches kids that words matter. Someone who shows up even when the world tells her not to." Claire felt something hot and sharp behind her eyes. She blinked it back, You don't know what it's like, she said, her voice unsteady. To walk into a room and know everyone's already decided you're less than. To watch men's eyes slide right past you like you're furniture. To hear your own mother suggest another weight loss program over Christmas dinner. You're right, Ryan said. I don't know what that's like. Claire waited for the but, for the pivot to some reassuring platitude that would make her feel worse. It didn't come. But I know what it's like to feel like you're not enough, Ryan continued. To watch someone you love look at you and see a placeholder. A temporary stop on the way to something better. Claire heard the fracture in his voice, the place where something had broken and never quite healed. She told me I was boring, Ryan said, that I'd let myself go, that she needed someone who inspired her. He let out a breath. I spent a year trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, what I could have fixed, and then I realized the problem wasn't me. It was that I was never going to be enough for someone who didn't actually want me. Claire felt the weight of his words settle between them. Two people carrying different wounds that somehow fit together. I'm scared, Claire admitted. The confession came out barely louder than a whisper. I'm scared that if I let myself believe this is real, it'll hurt worse when it ends. Ryan didn't tell her it wouldn't end, didn't promise her forever or feed her empty guarantees. I'm scared too, he said simply, but I'm more scared of not trying. The coffee shop felt smaller suddenly. The noise of the espresso machine faded. The other customers blurred into background static. Claire looked at Ryan's hand, still resting near hers on the table. She thought about all the times she'd pulled away. All the times she'd built walls so high no one could climb them. She thought about the poem he'd mentioned, the woman planting flowers in a junkyard. Her hand moved the rest of the way. Her fingers brushed his. Ryan's hand closed gently over hers. Not possessive, not desperate. Just there. I don't know how to do this, Claire said. Neither do I, Ryan admitted. But maybe that's the point. Maybe we figure it out together. Claire wanted to argue, wanted to list all the reasons this was a bad idea. But sitting there, with his hand warm against hers, and the afternoon light turning everything soft and forgiving, she couldn't find the words. Tell me about Emma, she said instead. Ryan's expression shifted, something lighter breaking through. She's stubborn, he said. Gets that from her mother, and me, if I'm honest. She decides she wants something, and she doesn't give up. Last month, she decided she wanted to learn every dinosaur name. Spent 2 weeks making flashcards. Now she corrects me when I call them the wrong thing. What's her favorite? Ankylosaurus, because it's armored. She says it's the dinosaur that couldn't get hurt. Claire felt something twist in her chest. A 7-year-old girl building armor. She understood that instinct. Does she know about tonight? Claire asked. About this? I told her I was meeting someone, Ryan said. She asked if you were nice. I said I hoped so. And if I'm not? Ryan smiled. Then I'll have to tell her I was wrong. She'll be disappointed. She likes being right. Claire almost smiled back. Almost. I'm not good with kids, she said. You're a teacher. That's different. I teach teenagers. They're mostly self-sufficient. And cynical. I understand, cynical. Emma's not cynical, Ryan said, but she's careful. Like you. Claire didn't know what to say to that. She looked down at their hands, still joined on the table. Outside, the sun had started to set. The golden light had turned orange, then pink. The coffee shop door opened and closed. People came and went. The world kept moving. But here, at this corner table with cold coffee and a worn literary journal between them, something fragile and terrifying had begun to take shape. Claire didn't believe in fairy tales. She didn't believe in happy endings or love that conquered all. But maybe she could believe in this, in a man who read her poetry and didn't look away, in a conversation that lasted longer than her defenses. "I want to try," Clare said. The words felt like jumping off a cliff. "I don't know if I can, but I want to." Ryan's hand tightened around hers. "That's enough," he said. "That's more than enough." 3 weeks after that first coffee shop meeting, Clare stood in front of Ryan's house and felt her stomach turn to stone. The building was modest, a 2-story with a small front yard and bikes leaning against the porch. Normal. The kind of place where families lived. She didn't belong here. Ryan opened the door before she could knock. He wore jeans and a faded band t-shirt, flour dusting his sleeve. "We're making cookies," he said, grinning. "Fair warning, Emma takes this very seriously." Inside, the house smelled like vanilla and burnt sugar. A small girl with dark curls, and Ryan's eyes stood on a step stool at the kitchen counter, wielding a wooden spoon like a weapon. "You have to stir clockwise," Emma announced without looking up. Otherwise, the universe gets confused. Clare felt something crack in her chest. The girl was so small, so certain of her own logic. "Clare, this is Emma," Ryan said. "Emma, this is Miss Morgan. She's a teacher." Emma finally looked up. Her gaze was sharp, assessing. "Do you teach dinosaurs?" "English," Clare said. "Poetry, mostly." Emma's nose wrinkled. "That's just feelings with fancy words." Ryan coughed to cover a laugh. Clare found herself smiling despite the knot in her stomach. "You're not wrong," Clare admitted. Emma seemed satisfied with this answer. She went back to stirring, and Clare felt the tension in her shoulders ease slightly. This might be okay. This might actually work. It lasted 2 hours. 2 hours of cookie dough and dinosaur facts, and Emma's elaborate theories about why Ankylosaurus was superior to all other prehistoric creatures. 2 hours where Clare let herself believe this could be her life. Then Ryan's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression shifted. "It's my mother," he said quietly. "I have to take this." He stepped into the other room. Clare heard his voice through the wall, measured and careful. "Yes, we're still on for Sunday. No, I haven't forgotten." Emma had gone quiet, focusing on arranging cookies on a baking sheet with mathematical precision. "Does your grandma come over a lot?" Clare asked, trying to fill the silence. "Every Sunday," Emma said. "She brings vegetables. Dad says we have to be polite." There was something in the girl's tone, something that sounded like rehearsed patience. Ryan came back, sliding his phone into his pocket. His smile didn't quite reach his eyes. "Everything okay?" Clare asked. "Sunday dinner," Ryan said. "Family tradition. My mother wants to meet you." The words landed like a stone in still water. The whispers started at the grocery store. Clare was picking up milk when she heard them. 2 women in the next aisle, voices low but not low enough. "That's her. The one dating Ryan Fitzgerald." "Really? I thought he'd go for someone more. You know." "I know. Poor thing. He's probably just being nice." Claire's hand tightened on the milk carton. She told herself to walk away, to let it go. But her feet stayed rooted to the linoleum floor. She turned the corner and faced them. 2 women she vaguely recognized from parent-teacher conferences. Perfectly styled hair. Gym-toned bodies. The kind of women who fit. "Can I help you?" Clare asked, her voice flat. The women's faces went red. One of them opened her mouth, closed it, then grabbed her cart and hurried away. The other followed. Clare stood there in the dairy aisle, surrounded by the hum of refrigerators, and felt the old familiar shame creep back in. She'd been stupid to think this could work. Stupid to think people would see past what she looked like. That night, Ryan called. "You okay?" he asked. "You've been quiet." "Just tired," Clare lied. "Clare." His voice was gentle, but firm. She closed her eyes and told him about the grocery store, about the women, about the shame that had crawled back into her bones like it had never left. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry," he said finally. "It's not your fault. It is if I'm making your life harder." "You're not." Claire's voice cracked. "They are. The world is. I just thought maybe it would be different this time." "It will be," Ryan said. "We'll make it different." But Clare wasn't sure she believed him. Sunday dinner happened whether Clare was ready or not. Ryan's mother lived in a house that looked like a catalog photo. Everything matched. Everything had its place. She opened the door, wearing pearls and a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You must be Clare," she said, her gaze sweeping from Claire's face down to her shoes and back up again. "Ryan's told me so much about you." The tone suggested he hadn't told her enough. Dinner was polite torture. Ryan's mother asked questions that sounded like concern, but felt like inspection. What did Clare do for a living? Did she have family nearby? What were her plans for the future? Emma sat between them, pushing peas around her plate, quieter than Clare had ever seen her. Finally, Ryan's mother set down her fork. "Ryan, can I speak with you in the kitchen?" It wasn't a question. They left. Clare sat at the table with Emma, listening to the muffled voices in the other room. She couldn't make out the words, but she didn't need to. She'd heard variations of this conversation her entire life. Emma looked up at her. "Grandma doesn't like change," the girl said matter-of-factly. "Dad says she'll get used to it." "Do you believe him?" Clare asked. Emma shrugged. "Sometimes grown-ups say things to make you feel better, even when they don't know if it's true." Clare felt her heart break a little. 7 years old, and already understanding the gap between what people said and what they meant. In the kitchen, voices rose. "Is she really the woman you want to be seen with?" Ryan's mother asked, loud enough now that Clare could hear every word. "What will people think?" "I don't care what people think," Ryan said, his voice tight. "Well, you should. For Emma's sake, if not your own. That girl needs stability. She needs a proper role model. She needs someone who's kind, someone who shows up. Clare does both. For now. But what happens when this infatuation fades, and you're left with... With what, Mom? Say it." Silence. Then Ryan's voice again, harder now. "You're done. We're leaving." He came back into the dining room, his jaw set. He looked at Clare, then at Emma. "Get your coat," he said to his daughter. Emma didn't argue. She slid off her chair and disappeared down the hall. Ryan's mother followed him into the dining room. "Ryan, don't be dramatic. I'm only thinking of what's best." "What's best is letting me make my own choices," Ryan said. "I'm not asking for your approval. I'm asking for respect. If you can't give me that, we're done here." Clare stood up, her legs unsteady. "Ryan, it's okay. We don't have to—" "Yes, we do," Ryan said, turning to her. His eyes were fierce. "We do have to. Because if I let this slide, if I let anyone make you feel less than what you are, then I'm part of the problem." Emma returned with her coat. Ryan took Clare's hand and led her to the door. In the car, Emma buckled herself in the back seat. Ryan sat in the driver's seat but didn't start the engine. His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. "I'm sorry," he said. Clare didn't know what to say. She felt raw, exposed, like every fear she'd ever had been proven right. But then Ryan turned to her, and his expression was so certain, it hurt. "She's wrong," he said. "Everyone who thinks like that is wrong." Clare wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that love could be enough to shield them from the world's judgment. But sitting in that car, outside a house where she'd been measured and found wanting, belief felt like the hardest thing she'd ever been asked to give. Emma's small voice came from the back seat. "I like Miss Morgan," she said. "She doesn't pretend things are okay when they're not." Ryan looked at Clare. Clare looked back. And in that moment, something shifted. Not hope, exactly, but maybe the smallest seed of it. The weeks after the dinner were different. Not easier, but clearer. Ryan stopped apologizing for other people. Clare stopped waiting for him to leave. And Emma started showing up at Clare's apartment on Friday nights with her backpack full of library books and questions about words that rhymed with dinosaur. Carnivore, Clare said, sitting cross-legged on her living room floor while Emma sprawled across the rug. Herbivore. Omnivore. Those are all just food words, Emma complained. I want real rhymes. Sometimes the best rhymes are the ones you don't expect, Clare said. Emma considered this with the seriousness of a scholar. Dad says you write poems about broken things, the girl said, not looking up from her notebook. Clare's chest tightened. Sometimes, she admitted. Why? Because broken things are still worth writing about. Emma nodded like this made perfect sense. Then she went back to her list, tongue poking out in concentration. Ryan stood in the kitchen doorway, watching them. When Clare caught his eye, he smiled, and something warm settled in her ribs. This was real. This was happening. But the world outside Clare's apartment didn't care about small moments on living room floors. Ryan's mother called 2 weeks later. Clare heard Ryan's side of the conversation from the bedroom. I'm not changing my mind, Mom. Silence. Because I love her. Is that clear enough for you? Clare's breath caught. He'd never said it before. Not out loud. Not where she could hear. I don't care if it's inconvenient for you. I don't care if your friends have opinions. This is my life, Emma's life, and Clare is part of it. Another silence. Then I guess you'll have to decide what matters more. Your pride or your family. He hung up. When he came into the bedroom, his expression was exhausted, but steady. She wants to try again, he said. A dinner. Just the 4 of us. She says she'll behave. Clare sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded in her lap. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. I don't need her approval. Yes, you do, Ryan said, sitting beside her. Not because it defines you, but because she's Emma's grandmother, and I need her to see what I see. Which is what? Ryan took her hand. Someone who shows up. Someone who's brave even when she's scared. Someone who makes my daughter laugh and writes poetry about flowers in junkyards. He looked at her, his gaze unwavering. Someone I love. There it was again, the word that changed everything. Clare felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back. I love you too, she whispered. And it terrifies me. Good, Ryan said. That means it matters. The second dinner happened on a Thursday night. Ryan's mother answered the door in slacks and a cardigan, her expression carefully neutral. Thank you for coming, she said, and this time it sounded almost genuine. Dinner was quieter than the first time, less interrogation, more observation. Ryan's mother asked Clare about her students, about her poetry, about the book she was reading. Real questions, not traps. Emma talked about the Ankylosaurus project she was doing for school and how Clare had helped her find primary sources at the library. She knows all the good books, Emma said, stabbing a piece of chicken with her fork, even the ones about extinct things. Ryan's mother almost smiled. Then, over coffee, she set down her cup and looked directly at Clare. I owe you an apology, she said. The room went still. I judged you before I knew you, Ryan's mother continued. I made assumptions based on what I thought my son needed, what I thought Emma needed. She folded her hands on the table. I was wrong. Clare didn't know what to say. She glanced at Ryan, who looked as surprised as she felt. I don't expect you to forgive me, Ryan's mother added, but I want you to know that I see how my son looks at you. And I see how Emma lights up when you're around. That's not something you can fake. Clare's throat tightened. I'm not perfect, Clare said quietly. I'm not the kind of woman people expect Ryan to be with, I'm never going to be." "No," Ryan's mother agreed. "You're not." She met Claire's eyes. "But maybe that's exactly why you're right for him." The words hung in the air, not quite acceptance, but maybe the beginning of it. Later, in the car, Emma had fallen asleep in the back seat. Ryan drove with one hand on the wheel, the other holding Claire's. "That went better than I expected," Claire said. "She meant it," Ryan said. "My mother doesn't apologize unless she means it." Claire looked out the window at the streetlight sliding past. She thought about the woman she'd been 3 months ago, the one who sat in a coffee shop convinced no one would ever choose her. "I'm still scared," Claire admitted. "Of what?" "That one day you'll wake up and realize this is too hard. That I'm too hard." Ryan pulled the car over. They were on a quiet street, trees casting shadows across the windshield. He turned to face her. "Claire, listen to me," he said. "We can stop proving anything. We don't have to fight the world or justify ourselves to anyone. Let's just live the proof." Claire felt something break open inside her. Not fear, not doubt. Something bigger. "What does that mean?" she asked. Ryan reached up and cupped her face in his hand. "It means I choose you. Every day. Not because you've earned it, or because you're perfect. Just because you're you." Claire leaned into his touch. Through the windshield, streetlights reflected off the glass, turning everything soft and distorted, and somehow more real. "I choose you too," she whispered. Behind them, Emma shifted in her sleep, murmuring something about armored dinosaurs. And for the first time in her life, Claire let herself believe she was exactly where she belonged. 1 year later, Claire walked into the same coffee shop where it all began. The barista recognized her now, had her order ready before she reached the counter. Ryan sat at their corner table, the one by the window where afternoon light pooled like honey. But today was different. Today, Emma sat beside him, swinging her legs and coloring in a notebook covered with dinosaur stickers. "Miss Morgan," Emma jumped up, nearly knocking over her juice box. "Dad says this is a special day." Claire's heart kicked against her ribs. She looked at Ryan, who stood and pulled out her chair. "Special how?" Claire asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "You'll see," Ryan said. And there was something in his smile that made her chest feel too small. They ordered coffee. Emma went back to her coloring, humming under her breath. Ryan set a small notebook on the table between them. Not the literary journal from their first date. Something new. Something worn at the edges, like it had been opened and closed 100 times. "What's this?" Claire asked. "Open it," Ryan said. Claire's hands shook slightly as she picked it up. The first page had a single sentence in Ryan's handwriting. "The day I met someone who taught me what brave looks like." She turned the page. A receipt from the coffee shop, dated exactly 1 year ago. The next page had another note. The night she told me about her childhood and didn't apologize for crying. More pages. More notes. A movie ticket stub. A photo of Emma asleep on Claire's couch. A book open on her chest. A pressed flower from the park where they'd had their first real fight and their first real reconciliation. Claire's vision blurred. She kept turning pages. The day my mother apologized, and Claire said, "Forgiveness takes time." The morning Emma asked if Claire could be her mom too. Every moment I realized I couldn't imagine my life without her. The last page was blank except for a single question in Ryan's careful script. "Will you continue this story with me forever?" Claire looked up. Ryan had moved from his chair. He knelt beside the table, and in his hand was a small velvet box. The coffee shop went quiet. Or maybe Claire just stopped hearing anything but the sound of her own heartbeat. "I'm not good at speeches," Ryan said, "but I'm good at showing up. And I want to show up for you every day for the rest of my life." He opened the box. The ring inside was simple. a single stone that caught the light and held it. "Marry me," Ryan said. Not a question. A promise. Claire's hands covered her mouth. Tears spilled over, hot and fast, and impossible to stop. "Yes," she whispered, then louder. "Yes." Ryan slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, like it had always belonged there. Emma launched herself at Clare, wrapping small arms around her neck. "Does this mean you're staying forever?" the girl asked. Clare held her tight, this fierce little person who decided Clare was worth keeping. "Forever," Clare promised. Around them, the coffee shop erupted in applause. Strangers clapping for two people they didn't know, celebrating a love they'd witnessed in fragments. Clare didn't care about the attention. She only cared about the man kneeling in front of her and the girl in her arms, and the impossible fact that she was here, chosen, loved. The wedding happened 6 months later, in a garden that smelled like roses and cut grass. No ballroom, no elaborate decorations, just string lights and wooden chairs, and the people who mattered. Clare wore a dress that fit her body instead of hiding it. Deep blue, like the ocean at twilight. Emma stood beside her in purple sneakers she'd refused to change, holding a basket of flower petals she kept forgetting to throw. Ryan waited at the altar in a gray suit, his eyes never leaving Claire's face as she walked toward him. When they reached the front, the officiant began. But Clare barely heard the words. She was too focused on Ryan's hands holding hers, steady and sure. Then it was time for vows. Ryan cleared his throat. "Clare, you taught me that love isn't about finding someone perfect. It's about finding someone real. Someone who shows up even when it's hard. Someone who plants flowers in junkyards and believes they'll grow." His voice caught. "You are worthy, not in spite of anything, but because you are exactly who you are. And I'm grateful every day that you chose me back." Claire's turn. She'd written her vows a dozen times, crossing out lines and starting over. But standing here, none of those words felt right. So she spoke from the raw place instead. "I used to think love was something other people got to have," Clare said. "Something I had to earn or change myself to deserve. But you taught me that love isn't conditional. It's not a reward for being good enough. It's a choice we make every day." She squeezed his hands. "You chose me, and I will spend the rest of my life proving you made the right choice." "You already have," Ryan said quietly. The officiant pronounced them married. Ryan kissed her, and Emma cheered louder than anyone. At the reception, Claire's sister pulled her aside. "I'm sorry," Rachel said, "for all the blind dates, for pushing, for not believing you when you said you were fine." Clare hugged her. "I wasn't fine," Clare admitted, "but I am now." Later, as the sun set and the string lights glowed warm against the darkening sky, Clare found herself standing at the edge of the garden. Ryan came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking?" he asked. Clare leaned back against him. "That a year ago I was sitting in a coffee shop convinced I wasn't worth loving," she said. "And now I'm here. Married, happy. It doesn't feel real." "It's real," Ryan said. "We made it real." Emma ran past, chasing fireflies with the other kids. Her laughter carried across the garden. Clare thought about the poem she'd written the night before the wedding, about two broken people who found each other in the wreckage and built something whole. She'd titled it, "Proving Them Wrong," and she'd dedicated it to Ryan, to Emma, and to everyone who'd ever been told they weren't enough. Because sometimes the best revenge was simply living. Fully. Loudly. Without apology.